Hi everyone, welcome back to my second installation of my obsidian mirror gazing podcast and scrying podcast. This is something that I've been wanting to incorporate into my channel here for a while, and I've been excited to kind of follow my intuition as I've watched my idea unfold. So this is the second mirror gaze that I've done here, and I've decided to time them to the moon cycles, which has been a cool, especially in today's mirror gaze, I got kind of an affirmation for choosing to do it that way, which we'll get into as I share about what I channeled in the mirror gaze. So I don't do the gaze at the same time that I'm doing the recording. And so for those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Cynthia, and I'm a folk magic practitioner and hedge witch. And I'm also a card reader. That's kind of the bulk of my channel, is card readings. And then I'm also kind of on the side as a part of how I earn my living. I'm a clinical social worker in a private practice, and I've got a long history of working for employers also in that way as a social worker. So the first part of this upload is going to be my description of the gaze and what came through in the channeled message through the mirror gaze that I did earlier. And this is in sync with the last quarter moon. So that's why I selected today to do the gaze. Tomorrow is the last quarter moon. And then after I kind of share some of the archetypes and images that came through the gaze, I'll pull some cards to kind of tie it together for us. One thing I want to also say is that I try to refrain from interpreting the message as if I'm somehow the guru that needs to interpret the message. I just kind of want to channel the images that as they come through, and you get to decide their meaning for you personally. I don't think of myself as any kind of shaman or leader or teacher around this. I'm a card reader and a folk magic practitioner, but I have a talent for gazing, and I like to share it. So here we go. For today's gaze, the first image that came through was the story or the archetype of Jekyll and Hyde. And the way that that showed up was with the kind of lurking monster behind us, the person who is in the first person perspective of this gaze. So there's kind of the lurking part of you, or possibly an entity, right, in the spirit world, something of that nature that is observing you and that's watching you. And it's a dark aspect of the self, or it's a dark entity from the spirit world that might be somehow attached to your home. Sometimes, if you believe in energy, you like to cleanse your home's energy periodically, especially the corners inside. Dark corners are a place that little things, just like dust devils and stuff, like to settle. Dark corners are places that, or corners in general, are places that little entities can kind of attach themselves and live in your home, for example, if you are someone who likes to practice in that world of existence on the energetic plane. So having that sort of, I keep being reluctant to use Jekyll and Hyde again because I can't remember which one is which. I think it's Mr. Hyde that is the sort of monster form of Dr. Jekyll. So to me, that kind of was representative of the shadow for some folks, and it might be for other folks that you need to cleanse your home or cut some cords with somebody that might have evil eye towards you. Another thing that came through as I was thinking about and meditating on dark corners, because one way that you can cleanse your home is by putting salt in the corners of your home inside and letting that salt rest for 2 to 3 days to absorb anything that might be attached, and then burying it outside. And as I was thinking about the dark corners of a home and the dark corners of our psyche, and following up with research after the gaze, the biblical verse Luke chapter 11 verse 34 came to mind. It begins with, "The eye is the light of the body." And so to me, that has a relationship, first of all, to the mirror gaze itself, And then the way that we take in information through the eye, not just our seeing eyes in the physical body, although of course that's definitely in play, but also our third eye. And taking in light through our third eye was something that came into play here relative to that biblical verse of Luke 11:34, and then the Jekyll and Hyde image that I saw sort of standing behind us, observing us and watching us. So we're being observed, we're being watched, either from our shadow or from spirits in the spirit world that might have a little bit of a darker nature or something. The second image that came to mind very vividly and brightly, very lit up in the gaze, was an image of a bow. So first of all, a bow from a bow and arrow, and then secondly, it shifted into the bow from a violin bow. So the hunting bow and the violin bow was something that came through. And I'm going to try to leave that alone and not interpret it, although the hunting bow has a big symbol, like archetypal history, and so does music. So just if the bow is resonating with you, and bows resonate sound, right? When they're being flexed and manipulated, look into the bow and what kind of symbolic meaning it might have for you. Right beyond the bow was an image of sunrise, and it kept showing me like a significant sunrise, like a solstice or a corner point to the light coming from the sunrise. So again, there were kind of images of corners being reflected, corners and angles, like right angles, third degree angles, corners, points of light in the corners. And the sunrise came through in that way at a corner point that it was coming through the horizon line. So those were the second and third things I saw. What was next was the fourth image that came through being a cavern or a cave. And caves, again, are spiritual portal points. So looking into humanity's relationship with caves, that might be a trailhead for you to follow after this reading, or human artworks in caves, or the spirit world and guardians of caves as portals into the underworld, right? There's often water spirits associated with caves. So those images came through very clearly. And then right beyond the cave became the whale, the mouth of the whale, and Jonah being swallowed by the whale. So that myth, Jonah and the whale, is from, in terms of the Bible, it's from the Old Testament. And then there are echoes of that myth in the New Testament relative to Jesus as a Messiah. But beyond the biblical story of Jonah and the whale, that story of a person being consumed by a giant fish is a very ancient myth beyond the biblical version of Jonah. It can be related to the Babylonian or Assyrian gods that are sort of fish representation, fish demigods that were teachers to humanity. And a lot of other imagery around a primordial fish came into my awareness as I was being shown going from the cave into the whale and Jonah. So I'll leave that there. I don't need to be doing any kind of interpreting around those stories. Those are very ancient human stories that go back beyond the Old Testament and the Jewish understanding of the story of Jonah and the whale. So that story may have meaning for you, or caves or portals into the underworld. The fifth image that came through, and one that I got really flooded with fascination over, is the metronome, which a metronome is a timekeeper. It's a human invention. And so a metronome can often be a soothing noise for a baby, for example, or it's used really to help musicians keep time. And there are probably other uses for a metronome that may be scientific in some way aside from keeping time as a musician. But in exploring what a metronome means to you, as I was exploring what it meant to me, I'm going to share about a figure that came up in the history of the metronome and its invention by people, because the story itself may have significance to you in the way that it did for me. So the first version of a metronome was created in the 9th century of the Common Era by a polymathematician who was born and who lived in Andalusia, which is the Arabic and Muslim part of Spain in history. He was born in the city of Cordoba, and he is one of the first people to create a metronome, and he did it using dripping water in some way. I haven't gone very deep into how he did that, but just now I'm noticing it makes me think of the cave pools of water. This metronome, and then this polymathematician whose name was Abbas Ibn Firnas, and he's famous for his contributions to science. He also created a looking glass or a magnifying glass, and created and invented colorless glass. So to me, as a mirror gazer, that has significance that came through, that almost like this gaze, his presence was making itself known in this gaze in particular. Not only that, there's a crater on the moon named after him. So he also practiced some experimentations with flight. And it was said that he used vulture feathers in those experiments of human flight, learning to fly as humans. So that was a super fascinating image that came through via the metronome. And I just wanted to thank him or his spirit for being present here. Let's see. The sixth image that came through, and I tried to avoid bringing it up because of the twin flame phenomenon. I try to somewhat avoid that phenomenon on this channel, but it's a real phenomenon that a lot of people are experiencing. And then there's also a lot of controversy around that phenomenon because people are getting scammed, and it's taken on its unhealthy life of its own. But regardless, 2 times I saw this, and this is the second time that it came around, so I thought, well, I better speak to it. And it was a candle showing first a single flame and then continually splitting into 2. So a split fire is what I titled it in the title of this video, or you could also call that a twin flame. And then what came beyond when the fire kept splitting into 2 was a kneeling figure between the 2 flames. And that showed me sort of the shape of a paisley, and that linked up to the Magi, or Zoroastrian priesthood, which came up in some readings I did a while back around the holidays, and the Magi. So look into that. There's some really fascinating information out there about holy fire, the cypress tree, the image of the paisley or Buddha, as it's known in its original language, and fire. So split flame and split fire, and surrendering between the 2 flames by kneeling and by praying came up as an image. And I'm going to leave that there as that imagery and allow you to explore that on your own. And then the 7th and final message that came through the last quarter moon obsidian mirror gaze today was the use of alternate nostril breathing, which is a meditation practice. And it showed me a yogi seated in a seated meditative position using alternative nostril breathing. And going beyond the alternative nostril breathing technique, he was visualizing a spark of light that was going up inside and then out the other, cleansing the inner system and cleansing the inner channels of energy. And there's a long practice for health, both spiritual, emotional, and physical, in using alternate nostril breathing as a way to heal your system, your nervous system in particular, but it goes way beyond that. And like I said, I'm not a shaman, I'm not a guru, I'm not here to teach any of those things, but that was the final, one of the most largely visual, literal images that I saw was sitting and doing alternate nostril breathing. So I think that has meaning for a lot of people that are going to be listening to this. So that closes the mirror for the gaze for us. That was the full gaze that I experienced. And now I'm going to pull a couple cards here to wrap that up. And I really thank you for being here and for listening and for taking these messages in. I would love to hear in the comments how they might have meaning for you, if that's something that you're interested in doing. And now I'm just pulling some cards here from the tarot, and then I'll maybe pull 1 or 2 oracle cards to tie it all together for us. Tying it together cards. So I'm realizing I want to lay them all out right now, the cards, and then I'll read them all together. And these are meant to be taken in the context of the mirror gaze. And so far, the 3 tarot cards I pulled are very heart-centered, beautiful, and celestial. Water element and heavens and celestial body elements are represented by these cards. I'll get into what they are in a minute. But to me, that speaks somewhat to the pools and the cave and water, the water element, and being consumed by the whale. But the heavenly bodies also strike me as the solstice energy and solar myth around some of the archetypes that came through. So the cards that I've pulled here are the star card, like I said, representing the celestial bodies. And then a card that is with that in text is mother and child, which is probably the origin of humanity. A symbol of motherhood and fertility are some of the oldest symbols that people have created. And again, that takes me back into the caves and cave art, and Venus of Willendorf, and some of the earliest images made by people were of a fertile pregnant woman. So the star is represented here with that mother and child. The Ace of Cups is the purest form of unconditional love, and the text with that is you must turn this over to fate. To me, that speaks to that kneeling at the flame and the surrender to the flame. It's interesting that the Ace of Cups is a water sign, but it's pure unconditional love. And the fire represented in the gaze was holy fire, the cypress tree and the magi and their use of holy fire in their religious practice. Being very heart-centered, holy fire is the flaming heart. So the heart is the water element in the tarot, and in Zoroastrian faith, the heart is a flame, and that's holy fire, right? So the third card was the Six of Cups, and then the text with that is climb the burning ladder. So this has been a healing process for you on a personal level, and there might be healing for you, an image about your own experience with going into the mouth of the whale, for example, right? But climb the burning ladder and Six of Cups speaks to me about healing heart wounds or heart-centered experiences from your past. That can be childhood, or it can be with a lover. Climb the burning ladder, again, is sort of the purification of fire. There's no way out but through. You have to have the fire element involved in healing the heart element to some extent. And those two elements, fire and water, keep one another in balance. Climbing the burning ladder around past energy of cups energy around your heart center. Now I'm just going to pull one or two more cards to tie this together, and that will be the reading. Oops. First card is Here and Now, and this is Colette Baron Reed's Oracle deck. Here and Now, it's card 32 in the reverse. Whenever you find your mind drifting into the past, wondering if things could have or should have been better, or whenever you find yourself longing for the old days, you leak power. The same is true of looking too far ahead and hoping the future will provide you with certainty. Driven by ambition, you might wander too long in a place with no substance and forget that you are here today. The past and future are illusions. This leads me to that 3 days and 3 nights. That numerology in the story of Jonah and the whale goes beyond just the Jonah and the whale story as well. So the 3 is a sacred number that came to mind as I'm reading that. The past and the future are illusions. Whenever you leave the present moment, you're disconnecting from your inherent power to manifest your reality with true substance. Neither past nor future can give you what you need. Now is all that counts. Come back from those eternities and be here now. All will be well and miracles will appear as if by magic in the perfect timing of spirit. And then the last card is All That Glitters, and it's card number 16. And it came in the reverse as well. This is a signal to walk away from what you're contemplating. There is a thin veneer of glitter and sparkle that masks something rotten underneath. So that again speaks to me to bring it all the way back to the very beginning of the Jekyll and Hyde image. So that has resonance for someone that really should take heed. Pursuing it will only bring about a difficult situation you will be sorry you got yourself into. Stay away. Isn't it wonderful how spirit protects you? Better things await. So that's an important final message. And part of me as a card reader that wants to interpret messages doesn't want to leave it there because I personally feel uneasy leaving it on a little bit of that dark note. But the gaze itself opened on a dark note with the Jekyll and Hyde. So to me, it's happening that way for a reason. So I'm going to resist any temptation I have to cushion that or to put my own spin on it and let it be the message. So that's a message for you. And again, if you have any interest, let me know in whatever way you feel comfortable, how the message resonates with you in the comments, if you're so inclined. I thank you so much for being here. I hope you'll stay tuned for more of these. They'll be coming out for now on the moon cycles. So thank you very much and take good care.